Hello and welcome to Reeltv. Today we sort of have a special episode. Today we're talking with Nina Jack, who has worked on Breaking Bad and Mad Men, and she's a producer on the upcoming series Better Call Saul. So do you want to maybe introduce yourself and say a little hello? Or
Oh yeah, I'm just so thrilled to be back. I graduated from Penn State in 1994 and in film and video, and continued working or began working in the industry as a DGA trainee, continuing into being an assistant director, and I've been very fortunate to work in that field ever since, leading up to what you just talked about.
That's awesome. So let's just get started with the questions, shall we? The reputation of a first assistant director is the taskmaster who cracks the whip. Is there truth in that? And how do you see yourself on set?
There is a certain amount of truth in that. You're absolutely the person that is involved in keeping the show, keeping the set and the show running. You know, I've heard it described as the bus driver, the quarterback, and sometimes even like the den mom. But no, it's not so much. It's not about yelling and being forceful. To me, it's more about you have so much information that needs to be communicated to everybody, and everybody on the set is there to do their job and there to do it as best as possible. They're there to help the director and the producer and the writer and the cast make the show as good as possible, and they can't do it without all the proper information and the amount of time and communication. And so that's my job, because I work so closely with the director and the producers to know what is coming up and what needs to happen. So I find that it's not so much about bold, bring out the whip. It's more about just making sure everybody's informed and is feeling good, and that there's a nice, calm tone on set, and everybody's happy to come to work and do what they need to do.
How often is it as calm as you say it is, though? Is it ever?
You know what? It often depends on the show, because it isn't all about the first assistant director. It is also as much about the cast, the director, the producers, and then of course what you're shooting. You know, some sequences are a little more frantic, I would say, especially if you're chasing the sun. It's about to go down or about to come up and you're shooting night. You know, if you're doing stuff on big, busy streets, you know, that can create a little more intensity, versus if you're just shooting a scene with two actors on a stage in a room, that's going to be a little more quiet and calm. So there are just certain things that will happen that'll just sort of create that environment. Comedy sometimes can be a little more active and fun because there's just a lot of laughter involved, as opposed to a more serious show. But I really, anything that's just a crazy yelling kind of set, I'll leave those to other people.
Awesome. Oftentimes, Walter White and Don Draper find themselves dealing with more than they can control. Yeah, you were a first assistant director on Mad Men for a couple of seasons, as well as Breaking Bad. So how do you function on set when you're overwhelmed and you're working with the director and special effects teams and the actors and the makeup and everybody on set?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of deep breathing. There's something to be said for yoga breathing. I think there's always having perspective and bigger picture. And just, you know, kind of sometimes you just have to sort of step outside of the moment of what's going on and remember what everybody's there to do. Remember what exactly you are doing. You know, we're making a TV show, or we're making a movie, trying to have fun doing it, do it well. There's a lot of money being spent. But this is, you know, just keeping a perspective on what we're doing. And really understanding at the heart of what any of the issues or problems that are coming up. I mean, sometimes you can tell someone is just having a hard day, or getting angry or upset or anxious, maybe just because they haven't eaten. It can be as simple as that. Or they have an idea they felt isn't being heard, or something isn't being communicated properly. And usually when you can figure out those issues, you can get to the heart of the problems and help fix it. And that's really very important, because as things start to build and grow, it just makes for a bit of a dysfunctional atmosphere.
The sun's coming out. Yeah, awesome. So actually, you just talked about this, so it kind of correlates up. But what are the differences in between film and comedy? You worked on The Office for a little while. That's one of my all-time favorite comedy shows.
It's a great show, yeah.
You worked on The Breakup, the Vince Vaughn comedy, and so the difference between that and filming, so drama or action, you've worked on The X-Files and The Terminator, Sarah Connor Chronicles. So what are the sort of major differences in mood or tone on set?
No, it's a great question. I think a lot of it is not as much necessarily about what it is you're shooting, but it is about the people from top to bottom. That's what's creating so much the mood and the tone. It will affect my job in the sense of, something like more of an action show like Sarah Connor or X-Files. There's going to be a lot more involved in planning and scheduling required for those particular sequences. A lot of prep. I find my prep on those shows is a lot harder than actually even filming it because of the amount that you have to get ready with the special effects, the stunts, safety, everything with locations. But once you actually get there, if everyone is completely prepped, it's actually really exciting and can be really fun because you're out there, you get to do this really cool thing, whatever it might be, whether you're working, in the middle of a power plant or with an oil rig or, out doing aliens landing, whatever it might be, because you've prepared and had meetings and discussions, talked about it. I find that when you're not fully prepped, that's where things can start to fall apart. It's really so much about the preparation. Something like The Office and comedies tend to be more about creating sort of a theatrical environment to allow the cast to really be able to perform, because and this is more in my personal experience. I can't speak to all comedies, obviously, and there's obviously comedies with big effects or stunts or visual effects, but I've found that those, because they're much more about the performance, so it's about creating that type of environment that they can play and improv. You're not necessarily as much going off script. There maybe isn't as much preparation, but you're allowing for more time to actually shoot it. And that type of quiet environment. Some of the comedies actually have the calmer, quieter sets and aren't the comedy central type environment you might think it might be, because you're allowing for them to have that environment to be able to do what they want to do.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, this is another one. I was really, really curious about this. Are there any significant differences in filming 22-minute episodes versus 44-minute episodes on shows? Like, are there stricter schedules? I know a lot of shows have more or less episodes in a season, but does the length of the episode have any sort of impact on the set and the way that the set runs?
Absolutely. Oh, yes, it does. There is, obviously you have more days when it comes to shooting a longer episode, but here's something that's interesting. I just finished a show for HBO that isn't on air yet. It is a half-hour comedy, more drama elements than comedy. It's not going to quite be a Curb Your Enthusiasm. It definitely has more. It's called Togetherness. Okay. And Mark and Jay Duplass are brothers who co-wrote, co-directed, and Mark stars in it, and it should hopefully be coming out early next year on HBO. It's going to be great, and it's a really good show. These guys come from the independent film world, have some wonderful independent films, and it was their first foray into TV. And HBO's model is a little different than, say, a basic cable model or a network model, and we actually had 6 days to shoot this half-hour show. That's very generous, and we were able to keep our days to maybe around a 10-hour day. But with the structure of how the show is, we needed that because it so much requires the actors to be fresh, to be able to be on, and it's so much about their performances, improvisation. You might be running a take for 20 minutes, half an hour. We have that ability now with digital rather than with film. So the directors can call out for different types of lines. They can make adjustments on the fly, and everyone can stay in the moment, which is really a lot of fun. And by doing that, keeping the shorter days even, they're really able to be awake and fresh and do that, especially because our writers were our directors and also one of our actors. On a show like Breaking Bad, we had 8 days, and you would think, if you have 6 days to do a half hour, you should have 12 to do a full hour.
Is this like, how many would you have to do like a extended episode? I know that they've done like, the finale was an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half, like something like that.
And we did shoot, and I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember exactly how many days we did. I think it might have been 11. Yeah. We did go a little bit
Crunch
over.
Time.
Yeah, and those days, you're never really going to work less than 12. On a rare occasion, you might have a 10 or 11-hour day. 12 tends to be the industry standard, and sometimes you go more into 13 or 14, depending on if you're at a location that you need to get everything that day, you can't come back the next day, and it's just a little more work involved, or for whatever reason, that happens. And so I do think on the 1-hour dramas, the single camera, it is going to be a little more intensity, not necessarily in a negative way, but there is more you're doing, so to speak, as opposed to the comedies where you're able to, because it's more about their performance, and if they're getting it rather quickly, if they're hitting that moment rather quickly, it can actually end a lot quicker, so to speak. But not always. As I said, that's just from my personal individual experiences. There's so many shows out there I haven't been a part of, and I think it really can vary from show to show.
That sounds good. Okay, this is one I was also really curious about. Are you fazed at all by TV renewals? Like when at the end of a season, the network will decide whether to pick up the show for another season or they'll say, nope, the show's canceled. Like I know that the Terminator, Sarah Connor Chronicles, which I loved when it was on, it was canceled after its second season. A lot of people were really angry about that. But and then shows like Mad Men and Breaking Bad, which have gone on for 5 and 7 seasons. So when a show ends, how do you sort of transition into the next thing? And are you fazed at all when you're working about being, who knows if my show's going to be able to keep going?
Oh, yeah, because that's my paycheck.
Yeah.
Definitely. You're always concerned about it. Everybody would love to get on that show that's going to run for several seasons because, you know, as exciting as it is to try new shows, there's also, you can tire of having to constantly get up and running with something new. It's nice to come back after a couple of seasons. There is a security, there's not only a job security, but you know the cast, you know the crew, you know the formulas and the tone, the patterns, everything that needs to happen. So that's really nice. You know, I was on a show called Jericho many years ago that ran for a full season on CBS. It was a post-apocalyptic show. And the show itself got canceled after the first season, and we were all so upset because it was such an amazing place to work. And the fans were upset. And they actually started sending, because one of the lines in the finale, it was a military type scene, and one of the actors had said nuts, N-U-T-Z. It was like, you know, darn it. Nuts. Yeah. And it's a callback to, I don't recall which general, somebody in I believe World War II, it was a callback to that. And so all of the fans that wanted to see the show come back started sending nuts to CBS. Oh, to the extent that they picked it up for a season 2.
No way, that's awesome.
It's sort of, there's a rare precedent that's been happened. There are shows I've been on where, you know, you're not necessarily sorry to see it go because it wasn't very good and there's always going to be another job. But certainly, like with Breaking Bad, that was an interesting one because nobody wanted it to end because we loved being on it, but everyone understood it needed to end because that was the right time for the story. And we all cared so much about the story that we wanted it to be right. So, but we're all excited about Better Call Saul.
Yeah, season 14 of Breaking Bad. Walt and Jesse are God knows where.
Yeah, exactly. So Breaking Good.
Yeah, Skylar is still really mad at everybody. But she's, this was one I was curious about. What is it like to work under a different director each episode? Because you're there for, I think you do every other episode on a lot of shows, but the director changes every episode.
Exactly.
So despite changing directors, how do you help the show maintain a consistent look and feel even though new people are being brought in all the time?
No, it's a great question. And, you know, like on Mad Men when it was first starting, that was a real challenge because most shows what'll happen, and what had happened on Breaking Bad by the time I joined, is they have a group of directors that they'll bring in specifically. Some are in-house, might be writers, producers, actors, and then certain directors that are regulars. And they already are very familiar with the show. But say on Mad Men, those first few seasons, we were finding the right directors, and we had several come in. And I think a lot of I really enjoyed it because it really kept me on my toes.
Yeah.
And it was there are times where you go, oh, I wish someone just already knew what was going on. But at the same sense, what you have to do to help get them up to speed, it's everything from introducing them to the cast and making sure they know who all the cast are, understanding just the style of how the show works, what type, you know, making sure they have conversations with the cinematographer, with the showrunner and the writers, and so they know what is being looked for in the show and how they're going to shoot it and design it. So it's really just making sure communication is constantly happening and being that person they know they can rely on. And then I'm also sort of the through person for the rest of the crew when they have information they need to get to or get from the director as well. Oh, okay. So it certainly gets easier as the show goes on and you have more regular directors coming in that you're used to and having worked with several times. But it's also a lot of fun to do it on a new show, and because every single director is different. They all bring something different to each show, which is really, really great.
Yeah, because I know I'm a big fan of, I guess I'm a big fan of AMC. Luckily, I end up watching all their shows.
It's a great network.
Yeah, I love Mad Men and Breaking Bad and Walking Dead and all them. But especially with Mad Men, Breaking Bad also, but with Mad Men, the sort of the look of the show is really quintessential to the way that the show works. Like the 60s is Mad Men. And you know how episodes revolve around things that happen during the show, and Albuquerque plays such an important role in Breaking Bad, so it's really interesting the way that you guys do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that, especially with Breaking Bad, that was really important if new directors were coming in is locations, because we shot so many locations on Breaking Bad, and making sure that they understood, taking them out on the scouts and, what it is that we liked to see and sell about Albuquerque, and really introducing them, because so many had never even been to Albuquerque, and helping them understand, when we're looking for certain types of locations, and here's what it is, and here's what Albuquerque is. So it's introducing them to that city. Mad Men a lot played either on stage or in interiors, and so much, of course, is dictated on making sure it could look like what it needed to without a lot of adjustment, because it wasn't a huge budget on that show for many years. I don't even know, even towards the end. These were not big feature budget type shows. In fact, the first 4 seasons of Mad Men was 7 to 8 episodes, which is quite tight for a 1-hour episodic. So a lot of that was, just working very closely with the production designer and the cinematographer in terms of creating that amazing look from that period that's just mesmerizing to watch when you see it.
See, that's fascinating to me. I am actually behind on Mad Men. The 7th season started the other day. I have not had time. Oh, you did see it?
There's a lot. No, I actually am behind myself, I have to admit. Okay. There's just so much good TV out there. It's something I think that is interesting, because the amount of outlets out there now and the amount of people moving into television, there's just so much good TV that it's hard to keep up. And I actually think, in a weird way, Breaking Bad found this perfect time niche where binge watching was just starting, and now it's sort of become the norm, but there's so many shows out there to binge watch that it's starting to stack up.
Because the ratings were around 2 million in season 4, and they spiked to 5-6 million in season 5.
And it was the highest rated series finale. A season and/or series finale, I don't recall exactly which, but I think something like 10 million viewers live.
It was high.
It was very high. It absolutely, and Vince Gilligan will wholeheartedly attribute so much of the success of the show to the critics who supported it and wrote about it, and then tying that in to it becoming available on Netflix, and being able for people to keep hearing, okay, I'm going to finally watch this show, and getting it on iTunes or Netflix and being able to watch it. As opposed to 10 years ago, where the only way you could do that is if you went down to Best Buy and bought the DVDs.
That was me. One day I went to Best Buy. I was like, I need a new show to watch. So I bought the first 2 seasons because they were on sale. And then it was before the 4th season was out on DVD. I had watched the 3rd one too. And it was before it was out on DVD, so I watched it. I had to watch it on online, and it was in school. I would during study breaks and stuff, I would hide somewhere in the school so I could secretly watch.
Wow, that's an addiction.
I was very addicted to it. I still think that season 4 is my favorite, because I just think I adore that season. But toward the end, when Gus and Walt and things are really heating up, I was hiding behind everything, watching it.
I tell you, when scripts would show up on set, and by the way, season 4 is where I started. So
okay,
but no,
season
kidding,
4 and 5,
yeah. But basically, scripts show up on set, and it's almost like production has to stop for a little bit. You're sneaking around watching the shows. Everyone's sneaking around trying to read the scripts for the next episode, because you're always prepping while you're shooting.
Yeah.
It's never not in production during the season. So if you're in the middle of shooting episode 5 of season 4, you're getting the script for episode 6. Mm-hmm. So everybody comes out, and even though we're all on the set and focusing on episode 5, everyone's trying to read and see what's going to happen in 6. And when the finale came out for the show, it was really intense for everyone. I don't recall the day the script actually came out for everybody, but I do remember everybody was just, I need a moment, I got to read it. But not everybody could, because a majority of it had been redacted. We do for security purposes.
Because I know the script actually got out. It was stolen from Bryan Cranston's car. Did you ever hear about that?
Well, the iPad was stolen. I don't believe
they
never actually got the script.
Okay.
But it was, we heard. In fact, we heard it was, he'd been out of his car all of 5 minutes and his bag was stolen. They did end up recovering a lot of it. They had, Sony was, working through Apple to see if they could shut down accessibility to the iPad. There was, and then the local news caught note of it, and they actually did a TMZ type piece. And it came up, and we all actually sat on set and watched on Brian's iPhone, because it was amazing. They were interviewing, they treated it like a humongous crime story. It was really quite funny. But no, I don't believe anything ever got leaked. But we are incredibly careful with it, and we will continue to be with Better Call Saul. Most shows are now. Everything gets watermarked. Everything. Things are shredded. Every paperwork. A lot of people are now fully digital, which helps as well. But there's a lot of caution and precaution taken, and in many of those final scripts, key points were all redacted, blacked out, so that only the absolute essential people that needed that information had it, which is interesting.
Yeah, I was actually at a rehearsal when the finale was on, so I was like avoiding every person in social networking site until I could get home and actually watch it myself, because I did not want to hear about spoilers. So another question, what is it like to work with Vince Gilligan? Because I know that you worked on the X-Files for 8th and 9th season.
I was there. I started halfway through season 6 and continued through the end.
Through the end. So did this help lead to a job on Breaking Bad, or was it sort of purely coincidental that you ended up on another Vince Gilligan show?
No, it did actually help. I could probably say 99% of my jobs are 6 degrees of X-Files. That was the very first show I had when I moved to Los Angeles from New York, but the first full run show. And it was an incredible experience on so many levels in terms of learning and the people I've met and the friends I've made. And Vince actually was not on set that much, and I was on set, so I didn't have as much interaction with him, only when he would direct, which he did do several episodes. So, and I was fortunate enough to be on set a lot and develop that relationship. Also, Michelle MacLaren, who was our producing director on Breaking Bad and directed more episodes than anyone of Breaking Bad. And she is one of the most acclaimed television directors, and rightfully so. She's brilliantly talented. And she started directing on X-Files and was also one of our executive producers there. So I developed a relationship with her as well. So season 4 of Breaking Bad went into a rotation that took a little longer than normal for whatever reason. They weren't able to bring back one of the first ADs. They were looking for somebody. Michelle called me up and said, by any chance, are you not on Mad Men right now? And I said, no, we just wrapped and I'm off for a hiatus, and it timed out and I was able to go. And I'm sure the AMC connection helped in terms of approvals, but it really was all the way back to those days. It's
keep your friends close.
It really is. It's all about, it's cliche, but it really is who you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. So sort of how did you find yourself working on your first set after graduating from Penn State? Because a lot of people who are film majors here, sort of, how do you find your first job? So how did you sort of find yourself in Hollywood after having your cap and gown diploma?
Right. What do you do? I was terrified.
Help me,
exactly.
Yeah.
I was really fortunate that here so many of the professors were so supportive and understanding, like, sort of what I was gearing towards, which was this assistant director and ultimately sort of producer type skills, because I really wasn't sure what it was. I knew what I didn't want to do. I wasn't a writer. I didn't want to do anything technical or cinematography, and they introduced me to the assistant director training program, which the Directors Guild, the DGA, actually has a branch in New York and LA, and you apply, and if you're accepted, which I was the year following graduation, I was in New York for 2 years working essentially. You're essentially working as a production assistant, but as the title of DGA trainee, you're paid. You're on the production staff, and you learn all of the ins and outs of being a set. So I was incredibly fortunate that I was placed on shows for 2 years, and then once you graduate, you're able to join the guild, and then you're in the big bad freelance world. Now, kick you out on your own, and it's really just, again, about staying in contact with everyone. I saved every crew list from every show, even while I was on summer hiatus during the summer breaks at Penn State. I would intern for an extras casting agency in Pittsburgh, and I saved all of those crew lists and just constantly kept in contact. And I said, I'll do anything, whatever you need. And once I was able to work as an AD, just one show leads to another. And if I found if you work hard and you have the right attitude, it actually is rewarded.
Yeah, you have an IMDb page, so you're.
I think anyone who works in film has that.
No, that's pretty cool. So here's one that I was curious about. So on set, everything is scripted, it's scheduled, it's storyboarded, everything is very official. But your job, you sort of run the set. You call cuts and takes. And one thing that you try to do, I guess, is uphold what the director's vision of the episode is. So how much creative control do you get as first assistant director?
There actually is a certain amount, somewhat depending on the show, but there's two forms of creative control, I would say. One, the background is very much under the team, the assistant directing team. So if you're shooting in a restaurant or a park or whatever it might be, all of the extras, for the most part, are directed by the first, the second AD. And that very much is a creative involvement because they help create the setting, the design, the interaction with the actors. So that's one end of it. Also, a lot of times when we're prepping an episode, I would say if it turns out that I see that what the director is starting to prep, we're not going to have enough time for, it's not going to be within our budget, or this isn't going to work this way, I'll work with them to help, maybe find solutions to say, or even with the producers or the writers to, with my knowledge of what I know we have time-wise, schedule-wise, budget-wise, but also knowing what's important to their story. Hey, can we maybe move this to this location because we're already shooting there? You still can have the story told, it just will eliminate a company move to another location. There's that kind of input that can be had. And even on the day shooting, it really, the director's interaction with the cast is really, it's him and the writer and the producer. But I've had certain relationships with certain directors where I might be able to give some input on what I think of a performance, or if I feel something doesn't feel quite right because maybe they're new to the show and I've been on the show and I think they're going to maybe want that to be a different tone. I would never personally say anything to the actor. That's not my role, but I will have those conversations with the director at times.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was really curious about that.
Yeah, it's not as it is definitely more logistical and more managerial and organizational as opposed to the creative. But no, there's definitely ways to sneak that in there.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit earlier when you said that you actually watch Mad Men yourself. So you're always processing new information with the show. So because you're always filming new episodes in different series at a time. So do you ever find yourself saying, hey, let's sit back and watch the final product when it's on AMC or whatever channel it is?
Oh yeah, I mean, it definitely, at least as a first AD, I didn't carry things all the way through post. Once an episode was shot,
you're done.
I'm done. That job, my job is specifically on set, and it wasn't even as much in prep world. So yeah, I would never see it until it actually aired. And a lot of times that would be long after we're done shooting. So yeah, I'd DVR it and watch it like everybody else. And that's
so
when I'd see it. I mean, season openers or season finales, they might have a screening party for the cast and crew and you get to go watch it in an auditorium. And that's a great way to see it. And that's neat. And you get it a little ahead of game. But no, I definitely do. I mean, I've been very fortunate to work on, really good shows that are worth watching. I've definitely worked on ones that I wouldn't bother watching, and they're a paycheck or they're a great environment to work in, but it just wasn't my style of show.
Yeah, what show you like?
But it just depends. Goodness, you'll find our DVR is probably more full of sports TV than regular.
What shows do you watch, just out of curiosity?
One of the shows I was obsessed with was Friday Night Lights.
Okay.
I loved Friday Night Lights. I was a big fan of Lost as well. I on my queue that I need to watch, I haven't been caught up on, House of Cards, and I did. That's kind of the problem with working in the industry. You end up not having time to actually watch.
Yeah, earlier you said they're like TV's grown and there are so many shows to watch, but it's hard to say, oh, I can't keep up with everything. You have to pick the ones that you really, really want to watch.
It's true. It's true.
If you're looking for one, you liked Friday Night Lights. That's Jason Katims. You should watch Parenthood. I don't know if you watched that show.
I haven't. I haven't seen it recently.
That's like one of my favorite shows.
He's great. I actually was fortunate to do a pilot with him that unfortunately didn't get picked up after Friday Night Lights. But yeah, he's very talented, phenomenal person to work with.
Yeah, he sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I adore that show.
Oh, good. Then I think you'll really like the one I was just talking about for HBO, Togetherness.
Oh, really?
I kind of call it, it's sort of a half-hour version with a little bit more comedy involved, but it's very much about the family unit.
Oh,
and
it's
the
a
dysfunction.
family HBO show. See, they haven't done a lot of family shows in a while. They had 6 Feet Under and Big Love and some sort of odd family shows, but they don't really have like a.
No, this is the main. There's the main married couple and the dysfunctions around that.
See,
so yeah.
See, I love that. All right, well, we're about to wrap up here, but I have to say that one of my favorite Breaking Bad characters is Huel, who's the bodyguard. So Better Call Saul is a prequel, as most people know. Are we ever going to get a little like behind the scenes, how did Huel end up the way he is? What's his backstory?
I think anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
And I say that truthfully and honestly, and not because I'm even hiding anything. They are, as we speak, in the process of breaking even the first season stories.
Yeah.
And then they are open to anything. The only characters we know for sure, of course, are Saul and Mike. And we'll see as it develops.
Possibly Huel, maybe a little bit.
Hey,
no, yeah, who knows?
anything is possible. We love Laval is just, he's so fun and he's just so good. I mean, just having him sit there breathing in front of the door. You could just have a show on him breathing.
You really could. I would watch that. Better call Huel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We'll have spin-offs on each one.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
All righty. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Reeltv.